We are Juan David Arias, Maria Nubia Cuaran, Liliana Muñoz, and me, John Quintero, and in this video we are going to try to illustrate a little bit about a type of bilingual education, denominated as mainstream education with foreign language teaching. To have a presentation order, we decided to add a content table, which is divided in 8 categories. First, we are going to talk about bilingualism and its 2 subcategories, weak and strong forms. Then we're going to focus on one of the types of the weak category, the mainstream education with foreign language teaching, explaining its categories, advantages, disadvantages, giving real-life examples of it, critical comments about it, and ending with a conclusion of the topic. We hope this video helps you understand these concepts. Okay, to begin with our presentation, it is important to understand the concept of bilingualism. We should keep in mind that there are a vast amount of definitions for bilingualism, even by various researchers on the field. However, according to most of them, it is a linguistic phenomenon that may occur in everyone, depending on factors such as context, level of education, closeness to other languages, among others. In addition, in 1964, Dybel argued that bilingualism begins when the speaker of one language can produce complete meaningful utterances in the other language. So now, we're going to see that there are various types of bilingual education, and they depend on how the two languages, main and second or foreign, are taught, on the teaching motives, and on the teachers, but also on the students' methods, policies, and society's attitude towards bilingualism. The factors influencing bilingual education are multiple and various, and therefore a good classification is needed to get a global idea of the topic. It is also very remarkable and important to understand that, according to the types of bilingualism, a school or culture changes their practices and focuses. So, the types of bilingualism divide into the weak and the strong forms. So, first, we have the weak forms of bilingual education, which divide in 5. Mainstream or submersion education. This is the assimilation of minority language pupils within the major schools, who are taught throughout the curriculum in the language of the majority, without paying attention to the mother tongue. Segregationist education. It occurs where minority language speakers and majority language speakers are completely divided. To minority children, to access to majority school is denied. They attend different schools where the program is taught in their own language. Transitional bilingual education. This program consists of teaching minority children in their language until they are thought to be proficient enough in the majority language to cope with it in mainstream education. Mainstream education with foreign language teaching, which will be the focus of this video. It mainly consists of teaching few curriculum classes in the foreign language. And finally, separatist education, which is a minority language tends to detach itself from the majority language. In fact, the objectives of the schools are monolingual or monocultural, trying to maintain independence from the majority language and culture. Now we have this table, in which these weak types have been divided and more specified. As we can see, there is a name or alternative names for a type of bilingualism, and then we have the typical students of this model of bilingualism. Following on, there is the aim society has for this type of bilingual education, and finally, we have the language outcome that students are supposed to achieve when finishing this type of education.
On the other hand, there are strong forms of bilingual education. The first one is immersion bilingual education. It consists of teaching the curriculum in a second language with the aim of producing efficient bilinguals. Then there is heritage language bilingual education. It occurs when minority children are taught in their native or heritage language, and the objective is to achieve a complete level of bilingualism. The last one is dual language bilingual education. It is also called two-way and occurs when approximately an equal number of minority and majority language students are in the same classroom and both languages are used during the lessons. Next table summarizes those strong forms of bilingual education and also includes the typical students. Then the language used in the classroom, the educational societal aim, and the language outcome. Now, the type of education in which we are interested is streaming education. But what is streaming education? It is the practice of placing students with special education services in a general education classroom during specific periods of time based on their skills. To clarify, this means that students who are a part of the special education classroom will join the regular education classroom at certain times which are fitting for the special education students. These students may attend art or physical education in regular classrooms. Streaming refers to the grouping of students by ability. Students within a certain ability range are grouped together as a class. The objective is to allow like students to move ahead at a pace that matches their abilities. Within a streamed class setting, the teacher is able to set a suitable path for the class and maintain that path. There is hardly any risk of leaving anyone behind. The entire class is challenged that a level gauge be appropriate for the whole group. The teacher can move ahead at a brisk pace with a group of 25 bright students who do not require much supervision and need little or no individual attention. In a class of slow students, the same applies. However, a slower pace would be necessary and a more reasonable number to work with would be 10 to 15 if teaching is to be effective. In either situation, the teacher is able to select appropriate paths and move ahead with it. In this type of class settings, students are able to motivate each other because they possess similar abilities, move ahead at the same pace because there are no major disparities in ability within the stream, grow in confidence and self-esteem since no one is made to feel inferior or stupid among his or her peers. In fact, they offer each other friendly competition, which is in itself motivational.
Now we have streaming education with foreign language teaching. It is about foreign language lessons as a subject in the curriculum. Very often the chosen foreign language is one of the world's mainstream languages. For example, English, Spanish, German, French, Italian, among others. Taking, however, into account the most useful in certain regions. Thus, for example, in Croatia, but also in the most parts of Europe and the rest of the world, the first foreign language, though, is English, for the simple reason that it is spoken and used in all major institutions. European Parliament, European Court, United Nations, etc. And in most internet sites, which is the most important medium at the moment. In this way, the next generations are being prepared to an increasingly multicultural and multilingual future. The problem with this type of program is that it is rarely produces functional bilinguals, able to communicate in a second language with a native speaker. The exception that proves the rule is the Scandinavian regions, where there is a high degree of efficiency in the second language, which is mainly due to a high motivation level. In our case, in Colombia, we must learn English in primary and high school because it is an important language in an international context, since it is usually used for business and has a lot of prestige. However, the competence that we acquire in relationship with a native speaker is so different because here we have few practices in the foreign language during a class. For instance, we just learn aspects of grammar and structure of a certain language, but we don't know how to use them in a real situation or context. Mainstreaming education with foreign language teaching in Colombia could be based on this last information, so the children are going to interact like the next video, but with English and Spanish. In the video, there are positive and negative aspects of this type of bilingualism.
Petit frère.
Un casque. Une banane. Le chien.
As the children move up into year one, again, we still have half the day in English, half the day in French. Our priority is making sure the children's literacy and numeracy skills are really secure in English. And then we move on to using the vocabulary in French as well. The long hand is pointing to the 6, and then the small hand has sort of half past the 8. So what time is it? Quelle heure est-il, s'il vous plaît? Naya.
It is 8:30.
It is 8:30. En français, comment on dit 8:30 en français? Il est quoi? Avery?
Il est 8:30.
Tout le monde?
I think that was one of the biggest challenges, really, convincing parents that it wouldn't impact on their maths and literacy development. We are accountable for children's progress and attainment in maths and literacy, ultimately, and that must be at the heart of what we do here. And the fact that we are learning another language just enhances and enriches the curriculum that we're offering the children of this school.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Chini et j'aime dessiner.
Oliver said, j'ai gagné means I win. It doesn't quite mean I win, but nearly. It's slightly different. Naya.
I have won.
Lovely. I have won. Brilliant.
When you look into it, the benefits of the bilingual education massively outweigh any disadvantages. The first benefit is obviously the language, they're learning French, but also there's cognitive benefits. The children are learning in a different way, it's activating different parts of their brain, it's making them think differently about things.
Let's see. 1 o'clock, please. Il est 1 heure.
There are obvious challenges to teaching bilingually, particularly in a situation where the children are not native speakers of French and neither are their parents. But it's basically good primary teaching practice. It's using lots of mime, gesture, visuals, making the learning very interactive, encouraging the children to want to join in.
Then the time is going to be 6:30. 6:30. Moi j'ai gagné. Très bien. I do put a lot of emphasis on speaking and listening, so it isn't just, oh, I've said that in French, what does it mean in English? It's a lot of actually getting the children to use the French as well. And then what we tend to do in terms of reading French is use high-frequency words. Et puis, ça c'est un peu différent, Javen? An example when we would use the word un. An example when we would use the word un. Avery?
Un casque.
Un casque. Okay, we also do reading and writing using word banks associated with our key text. So recently we did work on Hand of Surprise, which we read also in French as La Surprise d'Ande, and the children did sentences about fruit. Every week the children take home a French reading book, and we've had a French native TA record those onto CD for them. The idea was really getting the children used to hearing more French, because the majority of children in this class don't speak French at home.
And I was just totally impressed by the children enjoying a new language, using a new language, and responding to a new language.
It's something that we've seen in our eldest child, just his confidence, the fact that he's now able to express himself well in English.
You say Lundy in English like this. Monday.
I totally agree with you.
But also starting to be able to express himself in French is something that I think has been quite remarkable.
I can say goodbye. Au revoir.
Now we have advantages and disadvantages. First, has an advantage. We have that the foreign language as a medium to learn another disciplines of knowledge. It means that mainstream bilingual education is a title for the practice of teaching non-language subjects through the medium of a foreign language. The typical student is a mother tongue speaker of the official language of the country, who will be taught, for example, biology, history, or mathematics through a modern foreign language. And then, as a disadvantage, we have that students are not considered bilinguals because they don't have a high degree of efficiency in the second language.
Examples in a real context. Baker 2006 is the example of half an hour language teaching per day for 5-12 years of education, not really producing functionally bilingual children. Unfortunately, in junior high schools and senior high in Japan, the focus is on English as a language, and not English as a byproduct or storing some kind of content. For example, mainstream school only devote an hour per week to English instruction as a subject, getting worse results. There is a mentality in Japan that people can take one 60 minutes lesson once a week without doing any homework and still being able to improve one's language ability. Critical comments. To develop the abilities of a foreign language in students, it is necessary that the high and elementary schools increase the amount of language lessons based on content and to promote its use in meaningful activities. Moreover, it is important to realize that there are other variations in a foreign language that students are currently learning. So, the language education institution should prepare pupils more in skills to complete the knowledge that they are acquiring. Conclusion. Based on the authors, we could conclude that teaching a foreign language is a complex process when it involves a number of social factors like minority and dominant language, power of language, social identity, geographical location, and nationality, which cause an effect in the curriculum and the kind of education that a teacher implements in the classroom. With this type of video, people are able to realize that thanks to the different construction in the learning process of a new language, we can change the mark of our students. So, if we as future Columbia teachers, for example, make our students recognize the importance of learning a second language, not only for studying certain subjects but for interacting with others, then we will be able to say that certainly they will be able to have more opportunities, not only in the working field, but also in others, such as learning to communicate with others for a varied amount of purpose and more access to important information. Taken from Turnbull 2016, the dominant monolingual language pedagogies are conventional foreign language classrooms do not fundamentally recognize the way in which the L1 and L2 work in a learning mind, because usually in schools people tend to understand bilingual education as to teach the two languages in a monolingual way. Therefore, they are not able to notice that one student may tend to combine both languages when he or she is speaking using the mother tongue or foreign language.